Do you use the voice notes at all on LinkedIn for people you've connected to?
I haven't. I've had numerous people send me voice notes. I don't send it myself. I feel like I would be really awkward.
Is great. Awkward is great because awkward is authentic. If you sound too polished, then people are like, oh my gosh, seriously. He's just like, you come across like a salesperson. And so I think awkward is really, really, really good. And I think that can be so powerful for people who are, looking at developing a brand and looking at building their career out is you can leave a voice note because it's quite different. I just think it's important to that dance. It's a dance. I think it needs to start with you and ends with you. And then in the middle, it can be a bit of a voice, a bit of a pitch.
Are you feeling lost in your career or you want to have a greater impact but you don't know where to start? Welcome to Kinda Planned, the podcast where we help you unlock the opportunities that you can't plan for. Through engaging conversations with expert guests, we help you unlock the mindsets, strategies, and tools that you need to build the career of your dreams. So subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Alex Cutterford, and let's take a moment to unlock your next opportunity.
Well, welcome back to another episode. I'm joined today by Karen Tisdell. She is a LinkedIn trainer helping leaders get found by the right people. Karen, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast, Alex. I really appreciate it. Excited to be here today.
Yeah, so we're going to jump in. I love a good deep dive into LinkedIn, and it's been something that's been really, really powerful for me in my career, and also this podcast. Always keen to chat with people about it and get people thinking about how LinkedIn might be really powerful for them in their own careers. Do you maybe want to start off by sharing a bit about your own career journey and what's led you to doing what you're doing today?
Absolutely. Well, my own career journey, unlike a lot of people who will often have, what's the average number of career changes these days? Hasn't it gone from like 7 to
9.
predicted to be something like, is it 9? Is that the average?
It would be between 7 to 9, I feel.
Yeah, okay. I've had 2. I've seriously had to. So my background is as a recruiter. So I was a recruiter for 15 years. And when I was on maternity leave, wanted to go back to work, hadn't discussed my desperation at wanting to go back to work when my baby was still very small with my husband. We just didn't think that was something we should discuss before we had children. So we were kind of at loggerheads. I was at home bored and I started using LinkedIn to promote my LinkedIn profile and resume writing services. And it just boomed from there. So that was 16 years ago now that I've been helping leaders with using LinkedIn. I don't do much of the resume side anymore, a little bit sometimes. So I've had 2 careers, one as a recruiter using LinkedIn to headhunt people, where I found LinkedIn way back in 2005 and started my own business in 2000. Leaders with writing their profile, but also with growing their network.
Yeah, it's. I was noticing that. I was looking through your career history. I've been very different. I've already had lots of transitions from working in trades to working in youth work and career development, government. Yes, I was looking at, and I was thinking, because it stands out because, from what I see, like a lot of people that are sort of working in the LinkedIn space now, LinkedIn consultants, not many of them have been doing it for 16 years. And it made me, and I actually had to go back and Google. I was like, when did LinkedIn actually start? And that's where I saw it. So it was 2003 it launched. And so then you've started training in it maybe about 8 years, I guess, into 7 or 8 years into after it's launched.
I ran my first LinkedIn training session in 2000, late 2007, early 2008. That's my first ever session. So I was a recruiter using LinkedIn to find people. And I realized that I could use LinkedIn not just to find people to put into roles, but I could use it to find employers. And that's what I teach people to do now. And so I won a national sales award for selling the most people by just reverse engineering my success. So instead of just trying to find candidates and hoping to pick up job vacancies, I would be very targeted. What are the industries? What are the companies? And then approaching them. So that was my first ever training session way back in 2007, 2008. A long time. I know. And I remember the first time I ever saw LinkedIn, and I'm not usually an early adopter. I've got an embarrassingly old phone. My husband's like, seriously, when are you going to upgrade your phone? So I'm not usually an early adopter, but when I saw LinkedIn and my CEO was running a lunch and learn on it, and he said, I think this is going to be the future. We can use this. I thought, wow, this is like an address book. I can keep in touch with everybody I've ever met. And, your contacts on your phone, you end up with multiple entries and stuff like that. So I just thought this is going to be amazing and then every time people change company, they change their email address and stuff like that. So I thought, wow, this is going to be how I can track everybody I've ever met. But it also can be some way that I can search for people. So I knew that, like you, would be moving around because I know you've established your network in Newcastle. And for me, moving from Perth, London, Melbourne, Sydney, I had to build my network every single time. And so that's what I was really excited about with LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And you would have seen a lot of changes over that time as well, and how LinkedIn has iterated and changed. It definitely, my early perceptions of it, like I think I set one up a few years ago, had never really engaged with it. I think I just sort of like created a profile just because I'd probably heard it talked about a little bit, opened it up, had very little work on it and never really used it. And probably had the perception that it was really, really corporate-y, sort of stagnant was my perception. But then the last 18 months when I actually got really engaged with it, I've just loved it. So you would have seen a lot of changes over the years.
I've seen a lot of changes, both in terms of the developments that LinkedIn has made. And I think the ones in the last 6 years have been amazing. So it's so much easier now to use. I used to think of LinkedIn as like a little beach shack that was built on prime real estate. And instead of knocking down the shack, they just sort of bolted on another room and then bolted on another room and then put on a balcony. And, it sort of felt like that for a really long time. And it was really hard to navigate. There are still a lot of things that are hidden on LinkedIn that people don't know about, because they've sort of put in a new doorway and knocked down a wall, but people aren't realizing there's actually still access through there. So but what I've found most interesting about LinkedIn is the change in people's behavior on LinkedIn. So gone are the days, I think, of long invitations to connect to people where you're using all 300 characters, which is now only available on premium. If you've got LinkedIn free, you've only got 5 personalized invitations a month, 10 if you're very lucky, but usually 5. And it's capped at 200 characters. And in the olden days, we were sort of maximizing those and putting as much information as we could. And we were sending direct messages to people saying, what project are you working on at the moment? Or now it's like, I don't know you. That's kind of weird. So, I think people are far more inclined to follow people than connect, which I think is a missed opportunity. And I think it's the human element that's also changed a lot. And I find that fascinating. When I first started on platform, coloured cars were still a thing. Now, it sounds like a weird thing to say, but how many coloured cars do you see on the street these days? There's not that many. The most popular car colour nowadays is white, closely followed by 2 different shades of grey and then black. And when I first started using LinkedIn, the world was noisy in a different way. People were sort of more like peacocks. Everybody's a little bit more like, look at me. Well, now everybody's a little bit more like, please don't look at me. Let's all blend in. So it's an interesting journey, I think.
Yeah. We bought a black car. So I thought you were going to say
my husband has a white one.
I was anti-white because I was like, no, that feels like a work car.
And I have a shade of grey, so there you go. But, my point is, like, I
Yeah.
think human behaviour's been an interesting thing. I also think that people have taken the ideas from using other social media platforms toward LinkedIn. And, I'd love to talk with you about that. It might be a better conversation for offline because, we're here to help job seekers. But I wonder if you think of LinkedIn a lot as a content creation platform. And yet we couldn't create content on LinkedIn until 2014. So actually, at its heart, at its root, the beams and the structure of this building is actually not around content. It's actually about reaching out, connecting with people. It's actually really like an address book. So I think people also take ideas and mistruths from, you know, they take ideas from other platforms and put them on LinkedIn and think this is how LinkedIn works. If I create content, everybody will see me. Actually, you could never create content and get lots of job offers. You just need to be connecting with people and slowly sliding into their DMs and building that network. As your wonderful podcast guest, Surab said, it was such a great episode about, thinking about your network as being your network.
Yeah. I probably approach it as both. Sort of very much the most value that I see in LinkedIn is that ability to genuinely connect with people. And, like moving to Newcastle, reaching out to people on LinkedIn, and then I'm actually having conversations with people, people welcoming me to the city, caught up, I've been able to catch up with people, and actually then build actual relationships with them that have been able to flow into my work and all sorts of stuff. So I definitely have seen it, but then I definitely also approach it as a place that I can be building a personal brand through the content that I'm putting up, and as people then find me, that content that sort of sits there is able to give them an ability to really dig in and understand what I'm about and the value that I can add. But I sort of understand that it's not necessarily, though there were some changes that came and have gone that were allowing for wider reach, but I typically don't expect to get huge reach. But this is one of the funny things, and I think I heard you talking about in your episode, talking about the new feature that has come and gone, that was the more Reels function, that's sort of been absorbed from like an Instagram type video Reels. So that came in, and primarily I'm posting videos of my podcasts on LinkedIn. That feature came in. LinkedIn's picked up one of my videos, pumped it out, and it's ended up getting 1.1 million impressions and going really broad. And before that, I hadn't had any, I'd maybe had a couple in the 10, sort of between 10, 20,000, like one or two. And the rest, are sort of like around anywhere between 100 impressions to 1,000. And so that went ballistic. And then I had another one with the same person go to 300,000 or something, and then that feature's going away, and I'm like, oh well, that was nice.
It was absolutely well done on that. That's fantastic success. I love what you said there, and you're totally right. Content deepens how we think of you. It also builds that familiarity. If you connect with somebody on LinkedIn and you send them a direct message and or you personalize that invitation to connect, which has said it's now only largely available on premium. You've got limited on free. Then I don't know you. But if I see your content and then I see a couple of your content, particularly videos, then I deepen how I know you and I gain that familiarity. So content absolutely has a play. It just, people don't find you necessarily through your content. And if they do, then you're relying on happenstance. You're just hoping that the right person will see you and hoping that they happen to have a job vacancy and hoping that they happen to have a job vacancy now and hoping that that job vacancy is one that actually interests you. And, there's a lot of ifs in that sentence. And I I don't think enough people realize that the search bar at the top left-hand corner, you can put keywords in there, or even just not put any keywords and just click enter, then click on people, then click on all filters, and you can search for different industries, different locations, and right at the very bottom, LinkedIn have hidden this. This is where they've tried to sort of block out the wall, but you can go through a window if you like. Right at the very bottom, there's a thing called title, and you can search by job title. So you can literally find, for you, I know you work a lot with recruiters, I think, is that right?
I connect with a lot of recruiters, and I try to have a lot of alignment, I guess, with the work that they do and the work that I do, and I see it as a complementing aspects of someone's career.
Yeah, so you can search for recruiters and you can search for them in Newcastle and you can, just slice and dice all of the information. I think as for job seekers, that's so important because, as Surab has said in your podcast guest episode, it's very much about who you know and finding that right network and tapping into the hidden jobs market and the roles that are not advertised or finding out before they're advertised so that you've already got that foot in the door. I'd love to know, Alex, what changed your perception of LinkedIn? You felt like it was kind of the daggy uncle at the family Christmas party, but now you're quite liking him. So what was the change for you? How did that?
Well, I think the biggest change was that I actually engaged with it. So I actually dove into, I sort of was getting ready to move. I was realizing I needed to build a network. I had never really just properly tried to understand it. And so I think it was the mindset shift of intentionally engaging with it and saying, okay, let's actually play around with this, see what I can do. How can I make this work? Because if I'm going to go build a network, I think this is probably the space that I can do it, and really wanting to take ownership of my own career. So I think it was that first initial willingness to actually engage with it, dig into it, start playing around with it, and just work out how can I make this work. And I've always been interested in like digital content and social media and stuff like that. So I was sort of bringing that lens a bit to it, and probably most adopters of LinkedIn today do come with that lens of thinking of it as a bit of a social media, but understanding, or hopefully understanding, that it's got a professional lens and a career lens and context to it. So yeah, I just really, I think, embraced the idea of how can I play around with this to really start to build a network and connect with people. And I often say, like, so I just didn't fall into that black hole of moving to a new city, knowing no one, and having, no network around me. And the fact that I was working in the place I'd grown up previously. So I just had a built network. I wasn't just going to magically have, the footy coach that used to coach me be the principal of the school that I want to connect with, so I was really embracing that. I wanted to build that network online and to sort of build out my own career opportunities and launching the podcast as well. I saw LinkedIn as a really key place to find connections of people that would be great to have on the show, as well as being a way for people to find the podcasts that are in that mindset of taking ownership of their career, or not knowing where to start with that. And if they've come to LinkedIn and trying to find those answers, hoping that I can be there and ready for them when they come looking. So that's sort of the thing that really was the catalyst for me.
How did you shift those people from online to offline? I think that's the tricky thing for people who are looking for jobs. And I've been working with a couple of clients recently. One in particular is just this fabulous chap. And he said, I will just ask them for a coffee and tell them I'm looking for a job. And I'm like, no, gently, really gently. It's got to be all about them, not about you. You've got to try and give. And, when you do organize that coffee catch up, you can persuade somebody to give 30 minutes of their time. Not persuade, sorry, because you're not selling, you're just trying to build those relationships. I've just got a couple of questions about the industry. I was wondering if you have 30 minutes available. Does this day or that day suit? when you do turn up to that coffee catch up, bring a book as a gift. So that way, you're saying, the person's not cursing themselves all through the meeting. And because we've all had those moments where you go down the lift and you're like, why did I agree to coffee today? I do not have time. So you turn up with a book, you start with, I think you might enjoy this book, and then you have that coffee catch up. But how did you go from connecting with people on LinkedIn to taking them offline so that you can have exploratory, almost job interviews and things like that? How did you do that?
Well, I would say, and it's all been a bit of trial and error. So I think there's been times where I've connected with people, and you try to sort of, just not go straight for the jugular of getting to exactly where you'd hope to get to, and sort of show them that you've been engaging with their content or the conversations that they've been commenting on, or what they're about, or the work that they do, and asking curious questions and showing a genuine interest is definitely something I try to do. I don't think I've always nailed the perfect balance, and maybe everyone's going to have a different threshold of at what point do they feel comfortable to take an online connection to actually meeting someone in person. Like, it's quite a outside of LinkedIn, it's like that is just like a no-go, like just like hit someone up on Instagram and say, do you want to catch up? Like they would think you're
creepy
sinister.
and weird. Creepy and weird. That's why I always start with, I've got some questions about your industry and that sort of thing. So setting that scene. So I love that you said jugular. Nobody wants to be that lion in the long grass waiting for a wounded zebra to come along, and you're like, So how have you, so just really gently, and I love your curious question.
Yeah.
Real
so
questions.
I think that's been the, I can't think exactly, but it's actually engaging with topics that they've had, and then pursuing that more, and pursuing what did you mean by this, or I saw you are interested in this, like what got you into that, or hey, we're really aligned in your message, and the message that you put out, and what was it that drove you to get interested in this area, or things like that. And then I think you can sort of read who are people that you could have real alignment with, and that there would be value to having a further connection. Like, not everyone is going to be a connection that is all that more valuable to meet up face to face, other than you catch up and you might share more about what each other does, but you're not necessarily aligned to the level that you could really be collaborating together on things, or mutually benefiting one another through deeper engagement. So some, it's good just to, you connect, you might have a message back and forth a little bit, and then it's just good to be aware of each other, and be supporters of each other in the online space. So it's probably just identifying who are the people that would be really valuable and beneficial to connect with further and build a really strong relationship with, that you can be mutually benefiting one another. And that's where some of the recruiters that I've connected with has been really good. One, especially the ones that are super welcoming, and we're like, Teagues, who's been one of my guests, and we catch up regularly. Like, she was like, "Oh, welcome to Newcastle," really hope you like it here and stuff. And so, we've been able to connect further, and we often have been able to link each other up with other people, and link each other up with opportunities and things like that. So that's typically probably how I approach it.
Yeah, introducing other people to, I think you might be really interested in this person. Would you be open to me introducing you? I think there might be an alignment here, and that sort of thing. But it can be hard, I think, for job seekers to find something that's mutually beneficial, and what they need is a job, and they think they don't have anything to give. And that's why I'm a big fan of, try and move people to coffee catch-ups, people who are going to be important to you, and have a couple of questions. Have you read what's called Design Your Life by Bill Burnett and the other author.
I
Oh my gosh.
know the name of the book. I haven't read it, but I'm aware of like different life design principles and really passionate. It probably sounds like a book I'd like to read, actually.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And it talks about this idea of doing exploratory interviews. It's a very old school book, so it doesn't mention LinkedIn enough, or even maybe at all. But I think you can take those principles and go, how can I, instead of sending somebody a letter of thanks, actually, give them a DM and, follow up and that sort of thing. But starting with exploratory questions. But I tend not to ask questions in direct messages because I bet it sounded like you did, because I find it a bit annoying to be a bit of a Karen, like I do. I'm like, I'm really busy and you're sort of saying to me, so why'd you get into this? And I'm like, I don't have time to sort of chat to you. Like, why are you asking me these questions? I'd rather sort of have that sort of 10-minute phone call or have that 30-minute catch up where I can really focus and answer those questions. And I know that we're rapport building rather than sort of just typing backwards and forwards if I'm the one who's giving something, interesting. Yeah, it's hard to find the right questions, isn't it? Do you use sorry, go on.
Yeah, because I do try to, like, my ideal situation would be if there's someone I really want to connect with, like ideally getting to a moment where we could catch up for a quick face-to-face chat online is sort of the ideal in my mind. I think there's been times that when I've asked that too soon, I feel like that's the ones where it sort of doesn't go anywhere. And so it's trying to strike the right balance of jumping in and introducing yourself and seeing if someone wants to catch up, trying to have a bit of conversation so you're not, just going to full throttle. So yeah, it's a bit of a dance, isn't it? Just like any
it is a dance,
social interactions.
Yeah, you've got to give it is a bit of a dance, well said. And I think you've got to also give some gifts in there as well, and as you said, not doing it too quickly, so even though you're eager to respond straight away, just, leave it a couple of weeks. I noticed that you're in this industry. You probably saw this article that's been put out by the Sydney Morning Herald. I think you might find it interesting, just dropping it here. And then just leaving it a couple of months. And that can seem like so annoying when you're like desperate for a job, but you just can't move too quickly. You've got to go really slowly. Do you use some voice notes at all on LinkedIn for people you've connected to?
I haven't. I've had numerous people send me voice notes. I don't send it myself. I feel like I would be really awkward.
Is great. Awkward is great because awkward is authentic. If you sound too polished, then people are like, oh my gosh, seriously. He's just like, you come across like a salesperson. And so I think awkward is really, really, really good. And I think that can be so powerful for people who are, looking at developing a brand and looking at building their career out, is you can leave a voice note because it's quite different. I just think it's important to that dance. It's a dance. I think it needs to start with you and ends with you. And then in the middle, it can be a bit of a voice, a bit of a pitch. So could I leave you an example of one? Could I do that? Would that be all right, Alex? So I've been, you might have noticed me looking down. I've been tapping into my old phone, your profile. So because we're already connected, if I click on the message button, bottom right-hand corner, I've got a little microphone button. And if I press on that, I've got a blue dot. And if I depress that, I've got 1 minute to record. If I have a coughing fit or, if the neighbour's dog starts barking, I can just swipe or delete. So I love the idea of a sandwich where it starts with them, ends with them, but it's a pitch in the middle. So to give you an example, I always breathe in first and speak on the out breath. That sounds maybe like a strange tip, but you don't want the first thing people hear is you going, because that just sounds creepy and weird, right? No heavy breathing down the phone. So deep breath in and speak on the out breath. Hi, Alex. Thank you so much for connecting. Really appreciate it. Look, I'm so thrilled to be connected to you because I can see you're doing some great work in the Department of Education around employers and employees. And so really, really thrilled to be connected to you. Look, I don't know if you had a chance to have a look at my profile. If you did, you might have noticed I'm currently looking for the right role. So I've got a background in project management and government. So if you hear of anything, let me know. But really just wanted to reach out and say thanks so much for connecting. It's not something I take for granted, and I really appreciate it. Thanks again. Take care. Bye. So you hear how that was like a sales pitch, right?
Yeah.
Like I totally pitched, but I hope it didn't come across too salesy.
Yeah. The other one that I've had people do is people that I've connected with, we know each other now, and former guests sometimes do those. They might just see something, they might just come across something that they made them think of me, and instead of sending a written message, they'll just do a little voice message saying, "Hey, I just came across this thing, and they were talking about this, and it was really interesting because of this," and they share a couple of their thoughts, and as a little connection point as well, and so. It can be a really powerful way, and it does cut through. Like it does stand out a lot more. Like I can remember the people that have messaged me with a voice message. Like you can't remember every DM you have that you've written back and forth with people.
Yeah, I just find, when you said, over your many years on LinkedIn, you must have seen some changes. What's interested me is yes, the LinkedIn changes, but I'm really interested in the human behavior change, and trust in the written word's actually been declining since the 1970s. So since the 1970s, trust in the written word's been declining. And I think it's becoming almost an all-time low where we're just like, you open up your DMs, you almost expect to be spammed. Well, when you get a voice note and yeah, there is a pitch in there, but it starts about them and you get to hear a voice. Voice is the most trusted medium. We follow our GPS blindly, right? It tells us to turn left when every instinct is thinking, shouldn't we turn the other way? But we still go what the GPS tells us to do. So I think more job seekers could use voice notes for that. Thank you for connecting, and then just leave it for ages, and then send an article or a podcast guest episode or something.
Yeah.
Little gifts, little nuggets along the way, I think.
Absolutely. How can LinkedIn position someone to achieve their career goal?
For multiple ways. So I'm proactively, I'm really spruiking this idea that, employees, job seekers really need to be proactive in looking for jobs. And so looking for people who can employ them. So it's not just about waiting for advertised roles, but connecting with everybody in the industry and the companies that they want to work for. So that way they're tapping into that hidden job market. So LinkedIn can help people by using it as an address book of everybody that you would ever want to meet. It's also really important to have a fantastic LinkedIn profile and to have a profile that converts. So to do that, you have to look at all of the job adverts of roles that you are interested in, even if they're in another country or somewhere that you're not planning on ever living, or the job advert's 2 years old. That doesn't matter. It's just about collecting a whole load of job adverts, putting them into AI. What are the keywords in all of these job adverts? Making sure you've got those keywords through your LinkedIn profile, because then you can also be found you'll be converting people who look at your profile when you send them invitations to connect. But you can also be found by recruiters who are using LinkedIn to search for people, or they're looking at your resume and they go, well, the resume looks okay, but I need somebody who's got really strong interpersonal skills and who can really bring a network with them or whatever. So they'll have a look at your LinkedIn profile. Can you communicate? Do you have personality? Not seeing any here. So they'll look at your LinkedIn profile to verify what they see in your resume, or they'll simply look at your LinkedIn profile as the top of the funnel to see if you might be a fit for their role. So it's really important to think of LinkedIn as just the best platform to find a job on a number of different levels. And to that end, I think a lot of people, when they're not working, they just leave in their experience section. If they're not currently working, they don't have anything, like they end their position and they don't have anything. And I think it's really important to have in that section a looking for a new role, or looking for a new opportunity, or looking for a new challenge, looking for a new role as the company name. So list that as the company name. And then in the title section, you've got 120 characters there. List all of the different job titles of roles you're looking for. And in the body of that role, which is not a role, it's you looking for a role, put down everything that you can offer. So have lots of sentences and keywords and things like that. You can't just list the keywords not in a sentence, because actually LinkedIn can read, its AI can read whether those words are in a sentence or not. So you need to create a bit of a story on what you've done, what you're moving toward, why it's important to you. And as your other podcast guest, well, you've had lots of podcast guests, but Abby Naylor said, so many people don't put their contact details anywhere. I know I was looking for your email for something this morning and I could see in your about section, no email address. So it's not, if you want to flatten the path to purchase, you need to be accessible, and not everybody looks in that contact info section. And if they do, the default is they cannot see your email. So make your contact details visible. Otherwise, it's really hard to contact you about jobs as well. So yes, you get some spam, but miss opportunities. So yeah.
Oh, that's a good little one. I'll I'll take that on notice. Because I'm intentional with I currently don't have the website because I took it down while we're building a new one. But I had been intentional around having the website and stuff there, because you'll notice that even on company pages that you go onto and you can't find the links to the service and stuff they have it. So I definitely know how it just kills things right dead in their tracks. If someone that wants to engage with you and you haven't given them the mechanisms to do it, and then you're sort of sitting there going, oh, no one cares about what I'm putting out there. And it's like, no, they do. They just can't easily finish the steps of engaging with you. And for whatever reason, they might not want to or be able to, direct message you if you've like run out of, because I just use the free version of LinkedIn, and if you run out of personalized connections and then you can't send someone a message that you want to, and there's no other way, then it's sort of, it's dropped short.
You can just click connect, but not everybody wants to connect, especially if they're like, oh, if I connect to all these people who are looking for roles and, I don't really know. So, just flattening that path, just being really clear, and having keywords through your LinkedIn profile is just so important. It's not important in the headline section anymore. So I hear a lot of people say that you need to have keywords in your headline, the bit that sits underneath your name. And that's actually not the case anymore. Of course, it's really important to the human to be able to put you in a box and then to see how big that box is. So having job titles in there is really important for the human. But actually what LinkedIn, the algorithm, the relevancy ranking algorithm that dictates how high people turn up when people are putting keyword searches in. It's the title section. It's the words you've got in your about section. It's the words you've got in your experience section, and it's your skills. So make sure you've added all of your skills, and you've then assigned them to each role. So many job seekers are still not doing that. It's crazy.
That's amazing amount of information that you've given, and a lot of value that you've added. How can people find you and work with you and engage with you online?
Absolutely. Well, I have got my contact details all over my LinkedIn profile. So, but if you just look at me on LinkedIn, I do have the follow button activated. So if you do want to reach out and connect, just click on the 3 dots or more, and you'll see connect there. Don't need to personalize an invitation to connect. Just click connect. That's absolutely fine. Or click follow if you want. I'll find you and I'll reach out and connect. But it's just Karen Tisdell, Tisdell. So Dell as in Dell Computers. That's all.
Thanks so much, Karen.
Thank you, Alex. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for tuning in to Kinda Planned. Subscribe and send this episode to a friend that you think needs to hear it. Or head to my website, www.kindaplanned.com.au for free resources, or follow me on LinkedIn and socials so that we can keep the conversation going. Now go unlock your next opportunity.